stand.
My lord, it is the prosecution's case that on the evening of 15th of June 1973, at 42 Dorchester Close, the home of Christine Blandford, the accused, she did brandish, in a threatening manner, a kebab spit from a garden barbecue erection, and did strike Margaret Lawler on the shoulder and breast, occasioning burns and lacerations to the upper part of her body, which required a period of 5 weeks in hospital, 14 stitches, and several operations for minor skin grafts. Now, the prosecution will show that this wounding was maliciously intended, and that notwithstanding the fact that the accused and Margaret Lawler had never previously met, the accused had harboured feelings of hostility and resentment towards this woman over a period of time. And the first witness for the prosecution is Margaret Lawler.
Margaret Lawler, please. Will you come this way, please?
What is your religion?
I'm agnostic. I prefer to affirm.
Do you mean you have no religious beliefs?
Yes, that's right.
Please read aloud the words on this card.
I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Margaret Lawler?
I am. Or what's left of me.
Mrs. Lawler, you are required to answer the questions without comment or embellishment.
I'm sorry, my lord. Only I've suffered agonies, mental and physical.
Nevertheless, just answer the questions.
I'm sorry, my lord.
And you are a secretary at Arkwright Polytechnic, and you live at 17 Marlborough Mansions, Prince Albert Circus, Fulchester.
Yes, I reside there.
Mrs. Lawler, how long have you lived in Fulchester?
For 9 months. I came at the beginning of the academic year after I divorced my husband in Birmingham.
Do you have many friends in Fulchester?
No, I find it a most lonely place.
Where were you on the evening of June the 15th this year?
At a barbecue party given by Mr. and Mrs. Blandford.
And had you been invited to that party by Mr. and Mrs. Blandford?
No, not exactly.
Could you please tell the court how you came to be present?
Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Sanderson very kindly invited me to accompany them.
And how did you come to know Mr. and Mrs. Sanderson?
Well, Mr. Sanderson is a colleague of mine. He's the general administrator of the catering department of the Arkwright Polytechnic. And as I've told you, I'm a faculty secretary, commerce.
Would you describe the Sandersons as friends of yours?
Oh, yes. They've been most kind.
Now, when did you first meet Mrs. Blandford?
Well, I was introduced to her that evening on the patio.
And how did she behave towards you when you first met?
She became what I can only describe as hostile. No two ways about it.
What grounds do you have for thinking her hostile?
Well, Mr. Sanderson introduced me and she turned her back on me. She just spun round. I thought it rather bad manners on her part.
Did she say anything?
No, she just ignored me.
When was your next encounter with Mrs. Blandford on that evening?
About half an hour later, there was a general conversation on the patio.
What was that conversation about?
Well, the talk got round to sales parties. Mrs. Blandford sells clothes made of suede and leather at these parties. And I said I thought it was thoughtlessly cruel to butcher young animals when man has so many other alternatives at his disposal.
How did Mrs. Blandford react to that?
Well, she became what I can only describe as abusive. I said, well, we'll have to agree to differ. But she wouldn't. She kept following me all round the garden, raising her voice. I was most embarrassed.
Did you drink very much at the party?
No, I'm not a heavy drinker. I've had hepatitis and I'm not allowed to.
Now, did a number of people leave this party soon after 9 o'clock?
Yes, about 15 or 20.
Why did they leave?
They left because of Mrs. Blandford's behaviour.
Is it true that you had another altercation with Mrs. Blandford shortly afterwards?
Yes, but it was none of my choosing. I tried to keep out of her way, but she pursued me everywhere. Somebody asked me my opinion on women's liberation, and I said that although I thought a woman should be 100% woman, I was all for it if it meant being educated and having a career. Well, not that I'm an extremist.
Did the others agree with you?
Yes, they all did, except Mrs. Blandford, of course. I said I made sacrifices to get where I am today, and straight away she turned round and said, "Who to, the goddess of sex?"
What happened then?
Well, I tried to ignore her. I said, well, anyway, I got my diploma, and it was a passport socially to all kinds of people, university professors, people like that. I said I really pitied people who just stayed at home and looked after their children, just becoming cabbages.
How did Mrs. Blandford react to that?
Well, she took it the wrong way. She thought I meant it personally. I'd only just met the woman. How could I?
What happened after that?
Well, I didn't see very much of her for about half an hour. I could hear her voice, of course. The next time I came across her was when I went up to the barbecue. And I was set upon, attacked.
By whom?
By Mrs. Blandford, my hostess.
Now, I know it may be very upsetting for you to go through that experience again, but could you please tell the court exactly what happened?
Yes, well, I went up to the barbecue area because I decided I'd like to have a kebab. Little did I know that I'd end up as one.
Yes, could you just tell us the sequence of events as you remember them and try and keep your very understandable feelings under control?
Well, Mrs. Blandford was dishing out kebabs on long spits, long skewers they were, rotating on this machine.
Mrs. Lawler, will you look at this skewer? It's exhibit number 1, my lord. Was that one of the skewers?
Yes, it was.
I see, carry on.
Well, Mrs. Blandford was taking the skewers off the machine and holding them over people's plates, and she was scraping the meat off them onto the rice. Well, when it was my turn, I held out my plate, and she lunged at me. She went directly for my face with the kebab spit. Red hot it was. Well, I panicked because she was screaming abuse, and I caught this thing right across my shoulder and down across my breast. It was terrible.
Are you certain it wasn't an accident?
Quite certain. It was a deliberate act. She didn't slip. She aimed at me, at my face. I nearly passed out.
Will you tell us what injuries you sustained?
Well, I lost an awful lot of blood. I had to have 14 stitches, and I sustained very severe burns.
Did Mrs. Blandford show any concern over what had happened?
No, I didn't see any sign of any. But then I was in a terrible state. But I didn't see any sign of remorse, nothing like that.
Was an ambulance sent for?
No. Mrs. Sanderson took complete control. She was absolutely wonderful. I can never thank her enough. She drove me to hospital in her car.
I see, yes. Now, before the incident with the kebab spit happened, were you aware of any reason for Mrs. Blandford's apparent animosity toward you?
Well, I think she must be a very unstable person, and she was persecuting me for some reason. She was using me as a scapegoat for something or other.
Did you know that Mrs. Blandford had been Mr. Sanderson's lover?
No. I understood that Mrs. Blandford was happily married. Well, married anyway.
Well, what was the nature of your relationship with Mr. Sanderson?
He was a very close friend.
Is he your lover?
No, he is not.
Mrs. Lawler, we must make this point clear, I'm afraid. Have you had sexual relations with Mr. Sanderson?
Yes, on 1 or 2 occasions, but not for some time, and I certainly don't consider myself to be his lover.
Well, did Mr. Sanderson ever tell you of his former relationship with Mrs. Blandford?
No, I had no idea of it.
Did you ever write personal letters to him?
Yes, once or twice.
Did you write to him in about April of 1973?
Yes.
Is this the letter? It's exhibit number 2, my lord.
Yes, it is, but I don't
Now,
really...
were you aware that this love letter came into the hands of Mrs. Blandford?
No, I can't imagine how that can have happened.
Well, if it wasn't for reasons of sexual jealousy, why on earth do you think Mrs. Blandford attacked you?
I think she felt she was my inferior in some way, my intellectual inferior. I think she felt I was a much more positive person than she could ever hope to be.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Lawler.
Mrs. Lawler, was the barbecue party on June the 15th a noisy party?
Well, it was a party. You don't expect a deathly silence, do you?
You're not here to ask me questions, Mrs. Lawler. I'm asking you, was it noisy?
Average. Mrs. Blandford was making most of the noise.
Was there a lot to drink?
There was a fair amount.
Well, when people drink a lot, do they not tend to raise their voices to each other?
Not like that.
Mrs. Lawler, you said that Mrs. Blandford was following you about, pursuing you. Do you mean that she was constantly on your trail wherever you went?
Yes.
How many people were there at the party?
40, 45, I didn't count them.
And with 40 people to entertain, she nevertheless found time to follow you about constantly.
Well, not constantly, but whenever there was a lull, she made a beeline for me.
She was the hostess, was she not?
Well, you wouldn't have thought so from the way she was behaving.
Did she shout at anyone else?
Not in the same way. She seemed to have it in for me.
How much did you drink that evening?
I don't remember.
Well, you seem to remember a great many other details about it.
I was on white wine. I wasn't drunk.
Now, when you expressed your views on women's liberation, did everybody but Mrs. Blandford agree with you?
Not everybody.
But you said before that everybody else did agree with you.
The general opinion was in my favour.
And yet you were the one who was singled out, supposedly by Mrs. Blandford, to be stabbed.
Yes.
Well, why weren't the others attacked?
I don't know.
I suggest that your difference of opinion with Mrs. Blandford was slight, and that your perception of the difference was clouded by drink.
No, you know when somebody's insulting you. I wasn't drunk when I got there.
Oh, but you were drunk later then?
No, I've told you, I've got a weak stomach from my hepatitis. I don't drink in quantity.
Well, can you remember what the weather was like that evening?
Yes, it was a lovely, sunny evening. That's why I was wearing a décolleté dress.
But the barbecue was erected on the grassy slope, was it not?
Yes, it wasn't in a proper pit. As barbecues went, I thought it was rather amateur.
And the grass was rather wet?
I didn't notice.
But it had rained heavily that afternoon, had it not?
Yes, but it was dry then. It was a lovely sunny evening.
You would agree that wet grass can present a rather slippery surface, would you not?
Yes, I suppose so.
Now, you say that people came forward with their plates to be served at the barbecue.
Yes.
And they were, in fact, offered the kebab spit and the meat was scraped onto the rice.
Yes, that is how it was done.
Now, it would be possible, would it not, that if a kebab were offered at face level, if the person slipped on the grass, that they would injure the person to whom it was offered?
She lunged at me.
Just answer the question, Mrs. Lawler. It would be possible.
It would be possible, but not in this instance. In this instance, it was deliberate.
You are asking this court to believe, are you, that a hostess at her own party would deliberately attempt to seriously injure a guest who she'd met for the first time that evening, in front of all her friends and over a trivial difference of opinion?
Well, they do say that truth is stranger than fiction, don't they?
When the incident with the kebab spit occurred, you made no immediate accusation of assault. Now, why was that?
I was bleeding. I was shocked.
Perhaps you needed time to work out a scheme of suitable revenge.
I don't think I quite follow.
Well, it was 24 hours after you'd been in hospital that you summoned the police to your bedside and made a formal statement.
I was ill. I couldn't think straight.
Isn't it true, Mrs. Lawler, that you used this unfortunate incident as a pretext for revenge against Mrs. Blandford, to whom you had taken an unreasonable dislike?
If this isn't reason for dislike, I should like to know what is.
Anita Sanderson, please.
What is your religion?
I haven't got one.
Do you wish to affirm?
Very well.
Please read aloud the words on this card.
I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Anita Fleur Sanderson,
I am.
and you live at 19 Winchester Close, Fulchester.
I do.
Now, Mrs. Sanderson, were you at a party in Dorchester Close given by Mr. and Mrs. Blandford on the
Yes.
15th of June?
Yes, I was. If I'd only known what a terrible tragedy the whole thing was going to end in.
Yes. Now, were you a witness of the incident in which Mrs. Lawler received burns and lacerations?
Yes, I was actually standing right beside Christina. That is Mrs. Blandford. I was helping her with the food because I've done a course in cordon bleu, you see.
Yes. Will you tell us exactly what you saw?
Yes. I saw Margaret Lawler come up to the barbecue with my husband. And I was standing with Christine. I saw her go to the fire and take a fresh spit. I thought this was very funny at the time because there was still... Well, there was a lot of meat on the one we'd been using. And when Margaret held out her plate, I saw Christine hang on to the spit for the minute and her knuckles went white. And next thing I knew, she took a dive at Mrs. Lawler with it.
Did she slip?
No, it was a deliberate lunge.
What happened then?
Well, I saw her strike out with a spit. The same minute, Mrs. Lawler sort of fell back a bit, so this thing caught her across the bosom and shoulder. Thank heavens. And I could swear that thing was aimed at her face. And I say, thank heavens. Because if it had got her in the face, she would have had to have plastic surgery. And I speak as a registered beautician, my lord.
Was Mrs. Blandford silent as she struck Mrs. Lawler?
No, she was screaming. She was absolutely hysterical. I don't think she was coherent.
What did you do when you saw what had happened?
Well, of course, the whole place was in an absolute uproar. I took one look at Mrs. Lawler and I thought, Well, there's no point in us twiddling our thumbs while we wait for the ambulance men to finish their game of cards. And I got my new Avenger sitting in the driveway, so I thought, well, I'll drive her to hospital myself, which of course I did.
Yes. Were you aware of any animosity between Mrs. Blandford and Mrs. Lawler earlier that evening?
Yes, I'm afraid I was.
And how did the animosity arise?
Well, it took the form of a sort of dispute about whether women should have careers or be stay-at-home mice. It got rather nasty.
Yeah, so that's one reason. Can you think of any other reason why there should be animosity between these two women?
Well, yes, but I would rather not disclose it.
If you know anything that is pertinent to this case, you must not conceal it, however painful it may be to you or to anyone else. You are here to tell the whole truth.
Well, the thing is, my husband had been having an affair with Mrs. Blandford.
Can you substantiate that allegation?
Yes, indeed, Trevor told me himself.
Yes, but do you have any evidence?
Yes, I saw them together. You see, Christine used to come over to our house every Thursday evening, and though I always used to try to be out, you know, one can't always arrange these things absolutely to the minute, can one?
Did they go to bed together?
Yes. Occasionally I'd come home and I'd find them in the bath together. We have a double bath.
Yes, quite so. So they were having an affair?
Yes.
But can you see why that should be a reason for Mrs. Blandford to attack Mrs. Lawler?
Well, yes, I'm afraid my husband's affair with Mrs. Blandford cooled off a bit. They do, you know.
Why was that?
Well, frankly, he'd met somebody else.
Who was that somebody else?
Margaret Lawler. They worked together. We were all very good friends.
How did you know of this affair?
Trevor brought Margaret home.
Did they sleep together?
Yes, well, only once, actually, as far as I was aware.
And how did you become aware of it?
I saw them.
You will behave yourself with propriety, madam, in this court, whatever you choose to do outside.
So your husband formed a close association with Margaret Lawler
Yes.
after his affair with Christine Blandford had ended?
No, not exactly. These things rather tend to overlap, don't they?
Now, were you the only person to know of this situation?
No, that was the terrible thing. Christine found out.
How did you find out?
Well, she found a letter from Margaret to my husband in Trevor's pocket.
Is that the letter? It's Exhibit 2 again, Little.
Yes, that's it.
Now, what was the reaction of the accused on seeing that letter?
Oh, she worked herself up into a state of absolute hysteria. I said to her, now look, there is absolutely no point in you working yourself into a lather over Trevor because he's a butterfly person. Just flits from flower to flower. That's the way it is, whether we like it or not. I said, now look, I am married to him. I'm not jealous. So why on earth you should be in such a stew about it, I just can't think.
Mrs. Sanderson, would you say you were reasonably observant about people's behaviour?
Yes, I am. I'm a fairly acute observer of people's moods. I'm a big believer in psychology. I rather think it holds the key to our behaviour.
And from your observation of Mrs. Blandford, would you say that her jealousy was so intense as to be likely to make her violent?
Well, she did threaten a lot of things. You know, I really didn't take much notice of it.
Why?
Well, because I think we're civilized people. We ought to be able to accept these things and take them in our stride.
Am I to understand that you connived at your husband's adultery and furthermore did not think it was unusual?
I am sorry, my lord, but really there'd been little point in doing anything else.
I see. Well, Mr. Lloyd.
No further questions.
Is that all? Goodness, I thought it was going to be much worse.
No, Mrs. Sanderson, I have some questions for
Oh,
you.
yes, of course.
Would you say your husband was an insensitive or brutal man?
Oh, good heavens, no. He's very considerate.
Was he considerate, do you think, in taking along his wife and mistress to a party given by a former mistress?
Well, we don't see it like that.
Would you say you loved your husband?
I should say he's about the best friend that I've ever had in the world.
Yes, but do you love him?
Yes, I do.
Well, if you love someone, surely you don't condone their adultery with another woman.
Oh, look, I really had very little choice, you know. It was either that or losing completely.
I see. Are you usually so friendly toward your husband's lovers?
Yes.
And would you say that this was normal behaviour?
Well, it's probably not, but that's not my fault, is it?
Mrs. Sanderson, you say that you're very perceptive about
Yes,
people.
I am. I have to be. I'm a beautician. You can't do that kind of work without considerable psychological insights.
Quite. Well, if you're as perceptive as you claim to be, I suggest it is well within your powers of competence to ascribe to Mrs. Blandford a false motive for something that was purely an accident and thus make it appear to be an assault.
Why on earth should I want to do that?
Perhaps in order to be revenged on her for taking your husband away from you.
That is an absurd suggestion.
Will you expect this court to believe, do you, that you accept your husband's mistresses with complete equanimity?
I don't follow that question.
Mrs. Sanderson, you appear to be very unconcerned about your husband's women. Could this be because you and your husband have decided, as it were, to go your own separate ways?
I don't follow you.
Well, if your husband had extramarital affairs, did you do likewise?
Affairs, no. Relationships, perhaps, and then only one.
Or will you please tell me the name of the person with whom you had the one relationship?
No.
Miss Tate, how is this question pertinent?
It concerns a person deeply involved in the case, my lord.
Yes, well, do we really need to delve any deeper into this ménage?
Well, I would be obliged if you'd allow me to put this one question, my lord.
Well, very well, if you insist. You will answer the question that Miss Tate has put to you.
Very well. If you must know, his name is Doug Blandford.
You have a sexual relationship with the defendant's husband.
It's not only sexual.
Well, would you say that you are passionately involved with Mr.
I am
Blandford?
involved with him.
Passionately?
Deeply, perhaps.
Passionately, even?
Maybe.
So it would be convenient for you if Mrs. Blandford were out of the way.
Look, she isn't in my way, no.
But you've just said you're deeply involved with her husband. She must be in your way, mustn't she?
Look, you simply don't understand this, do you? This is part of the whole thing.
Well, would you kindly explain to us what you mean when you say it's part of the whole thing?
I do love Douglas Blandford, but I certainly don't want to live with him or anything like that.
Am I to understand, Mrs. Sanderson, that although you admit to great involvement with Mr. Blandford, you would not wish to marry him at any cost, however, even if you were free to do so?
Yes, my lord, that's right.
I see.
Thank you, Mrs. Sanderson. I have no further questions.
No re-examination, my lord.
Very well. You may stand up.
I call Dennis William Curtis.
Dennis William Curtis, please.
You are Dennis William Curtis,
I am.
and you live at 40 Dorchester Close, Fulchester.
I do. I'm an immediate neighbour of Mr. and Mrs. Blandford.
Were you present at a party given by the Blandfords on June the 15th?
Yes, I was, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Well, it was scarcely a pleasure, as things turned out.
Did you witness the incident in which Margaret Lawler was injured?
Indeed, I did.
Where were you standing?
Well, I was standing behind Mrs. Lawler, slightly to her left. I had a perfectly clear view of everything that happened.
Will you please describe what you saw?
I saw Mrs. Lawler take a clean plate from the pile and advance towards the barbecue. Mrs. Blandford took up a fresh spit roast from the revolving roast spit. I thought this was rather odd, because she seemed to have sufficient meat on the roast she was using already to have served at least one more person. And Mrs. Blandford's voice rose to screaming pitch, and in the pretense of offering Mrs. Lawler the kebab, she lurched forward.
Now, do you know of any reason why Mrs. Blandford should harbour any resentment towards Mrs. Lawler?
I knew her to have been in an adulterous relationship with Mrs. Sanderson.
How did you know that?
I had encountered them in an hotel together.
Where was that?
In Preston.
When was that?
The 18th of April this year. I was spending the week in Preston supervising the rationalisation of my firm's work branch in Preston. Fibre Synth always ensure that a suite is available at the Royal George Hotel for its executives. I met Mrs. Blandford and Mr. Sanderson in this same hotel.
Are you sure it was they?
Yes, positive. I was quite surprised to meet them without their respective marriage partners, and somewhat embarrassed, of course. I observed they signed the hotel register as Mr. and Mrs. Sanderson.
Well, perhaps they'd taken separate accommodation.
No, they were in a double room.
Did they appear embarrassed to see you?
Not really. I met them in the restaurant. Mr. Sanderson gave me to understand this was a perfectly normal procedure. He went to Preston simply to avoid what he referred to as tittle-tattle. I told him, of course, I thought it was no business of mine.
Now, was that an isolated instance, or were there any other occasions on which you saw them together?
Oh, yes. They were always quite open about it. I saw them in their garden, sunbathing. Their talk was disgusting.
The case of the Queen against Blandford will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court.
Well, I must put this one over here. I think we'll have some scotch if you'd like it. We must keep it up.
Strange goings-on in Dorchester Close, a new executive housing estate in Fulchester. Douglas Blandford and Anita Sanderson carried their colour supplement life into each other's bedrooms, and their spouses, Christine Blandford and Trevor Sanderson, seemed to be filling the gap, as it were, by an equally mutual exchange of feelings. But Trevor Sanderson, a natural philanderer, took up with a third woman, Margaret Lawler, and this upset the apple cart. At a barbecue party in her garden on June the 15th, Margaret Lawler was gravely wounded by a kebab spit held by Mrs. Blandford. The prosecution says it was malicious wounding, occasioned by the accused's jealousy. She says she slipped on the wet grass. The prosecution has called Mr. Curtis, who is now being cross-examined by Miss Tate.
Mr. Curtis, to return to the incident on June the 15th. Now, your description of it was remarkably detailed. What time elapsed between Mrs. Lawler offering her plate for food and receiving the injury?
Well, I didn't time it with a stopwatch. It all happened so quickly.
And yet you observed it in such detail?
Yes, I did.
You say that Mrs. Blandford was screaming incoherently. Now, you would admit that when someone slips, they tend to shout incoherently.
She was screaming abuse.
Incoherent abuse? If it was incoherent, how did you know it was abuse?
One could tell from her tone of voice.
Did you say to my learned friend, in the pretense of offering Mrs. Lawler a kebab, Mrs. Blandford lurched forward?
Yes.
Well, how did you know it was a pretense? Wasn't Mrs. Lawler holding up a plate for food?
Yes.
Mr. Curtis, you must have remarkable powers of perception if you're able to distinguish between what a person does and what they appear to do.
It was a deliberate action.
You say Mrs. Blandford lurched forward. Now, would you agree that when one slips, in order to regain one's balance, one can lurch forward?
It was a deliberate lurch.
When you saw Mrs. Blandford and Mr. Sanderson, as you say you did, in the Royal George Hotel in Preston, you thought that their being together was no business of yours.
Yes, indeed.
Yet you appear to have gathered a great deal of information about these people whose conduct, you say, was no business of yours, and whose behaviour you describe as disgusting.
Well, I couldn't help it.
Mr. Curtis, do you really expect this court to believe what you say when it is perfectly clear, in spite of your protestations to the contrary, that you consistently spied on your neighbours, and you jumped to conclusions about a relationship which you had no evidence was improper?
I wouldn't dream of spying on them. I was too disgusted.
Quite so. Mr. Curtis, do you belong to the Fulchester Tennis Club?
Yes, I do.
Are you also, indeed, the secretary of that club?
I have had that honour for some years past, yes.
Is it not regarded in certain circles as a very desirable organisation to belong to socially?
Wouldn't say so. It's just a tennis club.
But the subscriptions are rather high.
Yes.
And are all new members vetted by the secretary?
The secretary and the membership committee, yes.
Did you and your membership committee not refuse an application from Mr. and Mrs. Sanderson and Mr. and Mrs. Blandford in May of last year?
We were oversubscribed.
Well, according to my information here, more than 20 new members had joined by the end of the season last year.
I don't recall the exact number.
Well, why did you really refuse the application of the Blandfords and the Sandersons? They could afford the subscription, could they not?
The ability to be able to afford a subscription is not the sole criterion for membership of the club. I felt they wouldn't have fitted in. They were not worthy to be members.
Oh, surely, Mr. Curtis, that's not a very neighbourly action. You were prejudiced against them, weren't you?
I don't think so.
You didn't approve of these people, did you?
I don't approve of their way of life.
Do you bear any particular grudge against Mrs. Blandford?
Not at all.
When the Blandfords moved in, did you feel better disposed towards them than you do now?
Yes, I did.
Why was that?
Well, I didn't know them well then, or what they represent. I was being neighbourly.
You seem to think you knew Mrs. Blandford well enough in March of last year to suggest you go to bed together.
Certainly not.
But you did invite her to accompany you to the Lake District.
I have never wanted to take Mrs. Blandford anywhere, least of all the Lake District.
Mr. Curtis, I suggest to you that you made an improper suggestion to Mrs. Blandford, and as a result of her refusal, your testimony here today is based not on truth, but on your own hurt pride.
Certainly not. I am a happily married man. To me, all carnal appetites outside marriage are to be deplored and resisted. I have never made an improper suggestion to anyone in my life.
No further questions, Mr. Curtis?
No re-examination, my lord.
Very well, you may stand down.
And that concludes the case for the prosecution, my lord.
I call Mrs. Christine Blandford, my lord.
What is your religion?
Church of England.
Take the testament in your right hand and read aloud the words on this card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You're Mrs. Christine Blandford of 42 Dorchester Close, Fulchester.
Yes.
Do you have any children, Mrs. Blandford?
Yes. My little boy Justin is 7, and my little girl Deborah is 4.
Do you have any strong views on the bringing up of your children?
Yes, I do. I think discipline has gone quite by the board in this modern age. A lot of my friends think I'm terribly old-fashioned because I think a mother's place is in the home. But I made a vow not to go out to work while my children were young. It gives them security to have a mother at home. It gives them an emotional sheet anchor in a stormy world.
Mrs. Blandford, do you find that your views are often at odds with those of your friends and contemporaries?
Oh, yes, I'm afraid I do.
And you find that they sometimes lead you into arguments?
Yes.
Did one such argument occur with Mrs. Lawler on the night of the party?
Well, I wouldn't call it an argument exactly. It was more a difference of opinion. Arguing is for politics and things like that, and I have no time for it. I'd never met Mrs. Lawler before, so I'd no way of knowing what her opinions were, but I was quite forthright, as I always try to be.
How did this difference of opinion occur?
Well, although I don't go out to work, I do give leather and suede parties in my home sometimes. Well, Mrs. Lawler seemed to take exception to this, which I thought was rather strange, because everybody on the estate gives a sales party at some time or another, or makeup or lingerie. Well, Mrs. Lawler seemed to think there was something wrong in it. She didn't like animals killed. Well, I said, I don't like cruelty to animals either, but we do have to kill them for meat, don't we? And I noticed Mrs. Lawler wasn't a vegetarian, so I couldn't really see the logic in it.
Did this argument make you feel any hostility towards Mrs. Lawler?
Oh, no. She was my guest. Well, I thought she had a bee in her bonnet, but I was prepared to accept that. I suppose I have some in mine. But she persisted. She seemed determined to disagree with everything I said. She called me a stay-at-home mouse. Oh, but that to me isn't an insult.
Did you pursue Margaret Lawler in order to engage her in an argument?
Oh, there were upwards of 50 people at that party, and I was the hostess. How could I have?
Mrs. Blandford, we have heard that a number of people left the party at 9 o'clock.
Yes.
Why was that?
Well, quite frankly, I think Margaret Lawler had made herself unpleasant to many people.
Had she been drinking?
I really couldn't say.
Had you had much to drink that evening?
Well, I had more than I usually do if I'm at a party as a guest. But then I think if you're the hostess, you do, don't you?
Now, shortly before the incident in which Mrs. Lawler was injured, where were you standing?
On the grass behind the queue.
And what was the condition of the grass?
Well, it had rained. And of course, I realise now that the grass was terribly slippery.
What sort of shoes were you wearing?
Well, I was wearing sort of cork platforms, and I can see that they were quite unsuitable because it was partly due to them that I slipped and lost my balance.
Now, how were you serving the kebabs?
Well, there was a huge bowl of saffron rice, and the people helped themselves to rice, and then I asked them to hold out their plates so that I could scrape the meat off the kebab.
Now, can you remember exactly what happened when Mrs. Lawler came forward to be served?
Well, yes. She really wasn't near enough, and I would have had to reach right over the burning fire to serve her. So I came round behind the spit to get closer, and in doing so I slipped.
Now, did you pick out a fresh kebab for Mrs. Lawler?
Yes, I did.
Why was that?
Well, the old one was gristly, and it had gone quite cold, and, well, I did it to please her because of the little difference we'd had earlier. I did it as a sort of peace offering kind of thing.
Now, it has been said, Mrs. Blandford, that you were screaming abuse at Mrs. Lawler. Is that true?
Oh, no.
Did you scream at Margaret Lawler?
Oh, yes, I did. I screamed, "Be careful, it's hot," because she came forward. And then I twisted my ankle as I slipped.
And then what happened?
Well, I could feel myself falling, and I had nothing to hold on to except the burning charcoal in front of me, and the kebab seemed to fly out of my hand. It was a nightmare.
Was it an accident?
Oh, yes, of course. How could it have been anything else? To strike someone with a kebab stick in front of all those people? Who in their right mind would do a thing like that, however much they disliked somebody? Oh, not that I did dislike her, of course. It would be madness.
Now, did Margaret Lawler indicate in any way that she thought it had been done deliberately?
No.
Was this the first time you'd met Mrs. Lawler?
Yes.
But you did know of her existence?
Oh, yes. I knew she worked at the Polytechnic.
Was she, to your knowledge, having an affair with Trevor Sanderson?
No. I neither knew nor cared.
Mrs. Blandford, may I ask you, have you at any time had an affair with Trevor Sanderson?
Well, not an affair, exactly.
Did you commit adultery with him?
Well, I was foolish once or twice, my lord.
Will you please make it perfectly clear? Did you or did you not commit adultery with Trevor Sanderson?
Yes, I'm afraid so, my lord.
Mrs. Blandford, when did you last commit adultery with Trevor Sanderson?
6 months or more.
And who terminated this association?
I did.
Why was that?
I came to the conclusion it was wrong, and I couldn't go on with it.
How long did the association with him last?
Only a few months. I felt so terribly guilty. I felt ashamed to look my children in the face. I realized I'd been living in a fool's paradise, and I'd made a mockery of my marriage vows. I could see myself as I was on my wedding day, and I thought, to think I'd stoop to this.
Did you tell Trevor Sanderson that you wished to discontinue this liaison?
Yes, I did. I remember the day. We went to Fountains Abbey in the snow. It seemed the right place, all those sad ruins.
Yes. How did he react to what you had to say?
He seemed broken-hearted, but I was quite firm.
Did he ask you to sleep with him again?
Yes, frequently.
And did you?
No.
Why not?
Well, I think it's easier for a man to be promiscuous than a woman. I think fundamentally all women only need one man. It's different for men.
Mrs. Blandford, are you a jealous woman?
No. I don't think jealousy achieves anything.
Were you aware that your own husband was conducting an affair with Mrs. Sanderson?
Oh, yes.
Well, were you jealous of Anita Sanderson?
No, not jealous. A little unhappy, perhaps. I told Doug, my husband, that it was time to call it a day because of all the talk. Oh, and because it was wrong. In fact, especially because it was wrong. Things were being said to the children at St. Geoffrey's by other children, and, well, I didn't want to become involved in any more gossip.
Mrs. Blandford, are you and Anita Sanderson close friends?
We were.
And are you now?
No.
Why?
I think she wants my husband. She wants me out of the way.
Mrs. Blandford, were you aware that Margaret Lawler was close friends with Trevor Sanderson?
No.
Did you find a letter from Margaret Lawler in Mr. Sanderson's pocket and then show it to Anita Sanderson?
No, I didn't. I was brought up to believe that personal privacy, was sacred.
Have you ever seen this letter before? Exhibit 2, my lord.
Never. Even if I had, I would never have read it.
Now, when did you last sleep with Trevor Sanderson?
I can't remember the exact date. I prefer to forget it.
Well, I'm afraid you'll have to remember the exact date, Mrs. Blandford.
Well, the middle of November, Halloween. We went to a big party and...
Halloween, Mrs. Blandford, falls on the eve of All Souls' Day, October the 31st.
Yes, my lord. That was the date, then.
What are your feelings towards Trevor Sanderson now?
Indifference. I feel indifference. I have for a long time. I realize now that marriage and children are the most important things in life. Anything else is a recipe for misery.
Mrs. Blandford, are you on good terms with your next-door neighbour, Mr. Curtis?
No, I'm sorry to say.
Why is that?
Well, I've always got along beautifully with all the neighbours on any estate I've ever lived on. That's 5 or 6 estates. This was the first time I felt it was impossible to rub along.
Would you tell the court why?
Well, we were friends with the Curtises at first. We invited them into our home. And then, out of the blue, one Saturday evening, on the middle of March last year, I was preparing dinner in the kitchen, and Mrs. Curtis and my husband were admiring our mahjong set. And Mr. Curtis came into the kitchen, and he put his hand on my bottom, and he did ask me to go to the Lake District with him, and he used a disgusting expression. I was horrified. A man like that, I don't know how I got through that dinner. A man of his age. He just sat there all evening, undressing me with his eyes. I felt naked. Since then, I've been very distant.
Why did you invite the Curtises to your barbecue party?
Well, one must show some neighbourliness, and Mrs. Curtis has always been very pleasant.
Mrs. Blandford, did you apply to join the tennis club in May last year?
Yes, I did. I like tennis. It keeps you healthy, and I was the under-17 West Midlands champion in the doubles.
Was your application successful?
No. Everybody thought it would be. We were naturals, Doug and I.
Were you given any reason why your application was turned down?
No, but Mr. Curtis is the secretary of the club and controls admissions.
Thank you, Mrs. Blandford.
Mrs. Blandford, was the party on June the 15th a success?
Well, how could it be after that awful accident?
Yes, quite. But up to the time when the accident happened, would you say it had been a successful evening?
Reasonably, yes.
And yet we've heard that 15 or 20 people left at 9 o'clock before they'd eaten. Well, that's hardly the sign of a successful party, is it?
Well, it was a cool night, and Margaret Lawler had been unpleasant.
So you want us to believe that a stranger drove away 15 or 20 people? She must have been very offensive indeed.
Well, they didn't all leave because of her.
Did some of them leave because of your behaviour, then?
No, I was being what I thought was a good hostess.
You say you drank more than usual. Well, how much is more than usual?
Well, I couldn't tell you exactly. You know how it is. You put half a glass down somewhere and somebody fills it up.
You didn't know how much you drank. You were, in fact, drunk, weren't you?
I wasn't drunk. But I think the drink was partly the reason why I slipped.
And may it not also have been the cause of letting your social mask slip and allowing your true feelings to appear when you stabbed Margaret Lawler?
I didn't. I didn't stab her. I couldn't stab anyone. I didn't.
Now, you'd never spoken to Mrs. Lawler before that evening, had you?
No, never.
Did you like her?
Well, I found her conversation interesting because her viewpoint was different from mine.
Yes, you had a dispute with Mrs. Lawler about child rearing.
I don't know where this word dispute comes from. It was an intellectual discussion.
Do you think your children have been well brought up?
Yes.
So you think a woman that has extramarital affairs and condones her husband's adultery is capable of bringing up children well?
I don't have extramarital affairs. I was foolish once or twice with Trevor.
Foolish once or twice. Now, is being foolish a euphemism for having sexual intercourse?
Yes, I suppose
And
so.
sexual intercourse outside marriage constitutes an extramarital affair.
Not if it's only once or twice.
Only once or twice? Well, how many times was it, Mrs. Blandford? Was it once? Or was it twice? Or was it 3 times? Or was it more?
I didn't count.
Too numerous, in fact, was it?
No, it wasn't like that at all. It was hateful. I didn't want to go with him. I had to. There was nothing left for me to do when Doug went mad on Anita.
I think the relationship between these couples has been sufficiently established, Mr. Lawyer.
Yes, with respect, my lord, the pattern of behaviour among these people is important in establishing a motive for the crime.
Oh, very well. Mrs. Blandford, would you like to be seated?
No, thank you, my lord. I'll stand.
And this sexual relationship ended on Halloween, suddenly?
Yes.
Well, if you no longer had any physical relations with Mr. Sanderson, why did you continue to see him?
His wife visited my husband on Mondays and Thursdays, and I went to see him because I wanted everyone to think I was still having an affair with him.
You wanted everybody to think you were still having an affair with him?
Yes. It's terrible for a woman on the estate if she can't get a man.
Mrs. Blandford, are you aware of what you are saying?
It's the truth, my lord. There's only one shame, and that's in not having a partner of some kind.
By the way, where were your children whilst these matrimonial exchanges took place?
In bed. Or sometimes I took them to Mr. Sanderson's with me.
Now, you say, Mrs. Blandford, that it was you who told Mr. Sanderson that you no longer wanted to go to bed with him.
Yes.
Or wasn't it rather Mr. Sanderson who indicated that he was growing tired of you?
No, he loved me.
Indeed. Were you not afraid that he was flattered by the attentions of Margaret Lawler and that she had supplanted you in his affections?
No, he told me she was a friend.
And you believed?
Yes, of course.
How old are you, Mrs. Blandford?
35.
Do you know how old Mrs. Lawler is?
No, I don't.
Well, she's 26. 9 years, that's quite a difference, isn't it, Mrs. Blandford?
I never thought about it.
When did you find the letter from Margaret Lawler in Mr. Sanderson's pocket?
I didn't.
You never looked in his pockets?
No, I don't do things like that.
I see. Now, Miss Blandford, how well do you know Dennis Curtis?
Well, he's a neighbour who dislikes me. Everybody knows everybody on the estate.
intimately, it would seem. Now, did you speak to Mr. Curtis when you saw him in the hotel in Preston on April the 18th?
No.
But you did know he was staying in the same hotel as you?
I didn't go to any hotel in Preston. I have relatives in Preston. I'd hardly be likely to go staying in hotels, would I?
But you signed in at the George Hotel on April the 18th as Mr. Sanderson's wife, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
Well, Mr. Sanderson was there on that occasion with a woman, and you were that woman, weren't you?
No, it could have been anybody. Margaret Lawler, I shouldn't wonder.
So you are jealous of Margaret Lawler?
No.
Mrs. Sanderson says you gave her a letter written by Margaret Lawler. When did you do that?
I didn't. Oh, Anita must have found it. They were always supposed to be so open and above board with each other.
You knew of this letter's existence, then?
Well, there had been talk about it.
But you said you'd never seen it.
I hadn't.
But you must have known, if there'd been talk about it, that Mr. Sanderson and Mrs. Lawler had at some time had a sexual relationship.
Everybody chopped and changed. You didn't know what to believe.
And this gossip wouldn't have bothered you because you were not having a sexual relationship with Mr. Sanderson and you were not staying in a hotel with him in Preston. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, Mrs. Blandford, you're a clumsy woman.
Clumsy? No. I went to ballet school from the age of 3.
So you aren't prone to accidents?
Well, yes, sir. No, I'm not prone to them, but they can happen to anyone.
But you were clumsy on the night of the party.
No, I slipped. I wasn't used to cork platforms. As a matter of fact, I've thrown them away since because of the accident.
How many people did you serve before Mrs. Lawler?
About a dozen, I can't remember.
About a dozen, and you hadn't found out that the grass was slippery?
Well, yes, of course I had, but I was busy, and I have said I had rather a lot to drink. I'm one of these people that get high on drink, I suppose because I'm not used to it.
But you said to me earlier that you weren't drunk. Now you're saying you were high on drink. Well, were you or weren't you?
I wasn't drunk, but it affected me.
Now, when you proffered Mrs. Lawler the kebab, you say that you shouted out, "Be careful, it's hot." Well, why do you think that nobody else present heard those words, but instead interpreted that as screaming abuse?
Well, there was a lot of noise.
And why do you imagine that Mrs. Lawler and Mrs. Sanderson and Mr. Curtis, all eyewitnesses, can't accept the fact that it was an accident?
Because they've all got an axe to grind, every one of them.
Oh, they're all lying, are they? For some reason best known to themselves.
Yes, they are lying, all of them. And I know why. They've got it all fixed up between them. It's because I want to go back to a decent way of living, husbands and wives as it should be. But they want me out of the way because it's more convenient for them. But I've upset their apple cart, all 4 of them, because I believe in decency and marriage, and I'm not going to let it go on. I've got my children to think about. What kind of world are they growing up in? They don't know who to call father or mother.
So that's why you stabbed Margaret Lawler, in the interests of morality.
I didn't stab her.
The case of the Queen against Blandford will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court.
Well, I must put this one over here. I think we'll have some scotch if you'd like it. We must keep it up.
Wife-swapping is becoming a popular evening pastime, we're told, and quite a pleasant one, some would say, until a 5th partner appears to break the square dance. And that's what happened in Dorchester Close, Fulchester, an estate of fashionable executive houses. Margaret Lawler had an affair with Trevor Sanderson, who'd been having an affair with Christine Blandford. And the prosecution says that Mrs. Blandford maliciously wounded Mrs. Lawler with a kebab spit at a barbecue in the Blandfords' garden. Mrs. Blandford says she slipped on the wet grass. She's coming to the end of her re-examination in Fulchester Crown Court.
Now, you said earlier that your indiscreet liaison with Mr. Sanderson had been foolish and that you refused to continue sexual relations with him. Now, did you decide to do anything else in order to try and rectify the situation?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
Well, I've always been one for talking things over. So I arranged a dinner party for the Saturday night after the barbecue. I thought we could discuss things and come to a civilized conclusion about what was the best thing to do. But of course, that awful accident took things out of my control.
Now, whom did you invite to this party?
Anita and Trevor. I knew nothing about Margaret Lawler.
Thank you, Mrs. Blandford. I call Douglas Blandford, my lord.
Douglas Blandford, please. Come this way, sir.
What is your religion?
I don't believe in all that rubbish.
Do you wish to affirm?
Sure, I can tell the truth without all that mumbo-jumbo.
Please read the words on this card.
I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Are you Douglas Blandford?
I am.
And you live at 42 Dorchester Close, Fulchester?
I do.
Mr. Blandford, what sort of temperament does your wife have?
Oh, she's very understanding, very tolerant.
Have you ever known her to be violent?
No. There's no reason for violence. You can get what you want in this life without violence.
Have you never had marital squabbles?
Well, you couldn't quarrel with Christine if you tried. Oh, she waffles on a bit about the kids and cooking and things like that, but no, we never quarrel.
How long have you been married?
12 years.
And would you say it's a happy marriage?
Well, happy and marriage is what I call a contradiction in terms. We're very good friends.
Well, have you ever considered leaving your wife?
No, not at all. She's a very good mother to me and the kids.
Do you have a lot of parties?
Yes, we do. Entertaining is part and parcel of my job. We love it.
And are your parties usually successful?
Yes, always. Christine is a very good hostess. You know, they call our house the Club Mediterranean. It's always full of people.
Now, is your wife of a jealous disposition?
No. Wouldn't have married her if she had been.
Mr. Blandford, are you having an affair with Anita Sanderson?
No, not an affair. We sleep together.
I see. And how do you manage to reconcile this with a successful marriage?
Well, it's part of it. Sort of part of the modern marriage. Keeps the marriage alive.
Modern marriage. Mr. Blandford, how does modern marriage differ from marriage as prescribed in the prayer book? Does modern marriage encompass adultery?
Well, we don't think of it as adultery. If it's an arrangement, then there's no harm done.
That is an opinion which, in my experience in the courts, does not work out. Continue, please, Miss Tate.
My lord, did you know of your wife's sexual relationship with Mr. Sanderson?
Yes, of course I did.
And did the nature of that relationship change?
Yes, it sort of broke up.
In what way?
Well, they lost interest in the sex.
You mean they ceased being lovers?
Yes.
Why was that?
Well, Christine decided that she wanted to devote her whole life to the home and the family.
And did she ask you to do likewise?
No, she wouldn't dream of it. And I didn't.
Now, as far as you know, was your wife aware of Mr. Sanderson's close friendship with Mrs. Lawler?
No.
Mr. Blandford, was your wife's behaviour in any way abnormal on the night of the party?
No, she was very bright, very animated, but then she always is. She's a very good conversationalist.
Did she have a disagreement with anyone?
She had a difference of opinion with Mrs. Lawler.
Did she seek out Mrs. Lawler in order to argue with her?
No, she was far too busy keeping the party humming.
Mr. Blandford, did you witness the incident with the kebab stick?
I did, yes.
Will you describe to us what happened, please?
Well, the barbecue was standing a bit rickety on the lawn. I suppose I should have seen to it, or got somebody in to see to it, but quite frankly, I can't really be bothered with that sort of thing. The grass was wet and she just slipped.
Was she screaming abuse at Mrs. Lawler?
Christine never screams, let alone abuse.
Well, was she speaking as she fell?
She shouted a warning as she fell, yes.
Now, Mr. Blandford, what are your relations with your next-door neighbour, Mr. Curtis?
Very cool.
Why is that?
Well, I had to speak to him after he'd pestered my wife.
He pestered your wife?
Yeah. He and Christine had a conversation, as a result of which I went to see him, and he admitted having made an improper suggestion to her. I said that she was very upset by what I could only describe as his familiarity.
And how did Mr. Curtis react to this?
Well, he denied that he'd ever done anything familiar. He adopted a high moral tone, which I must admit I found rather funny.
Thank you, Mr. Blandford.
Mr. Blandford, do you love your wife?
Yes, of course.
But in spite of this, you both agreed to have extramarital affairs.
Yes.
Now, these affairs seem to have an almost geometrical neatness. Wife, husband, husband, wife, if you see what I mean. Now, did these affairs happen spontaneously at the same time?
Yes.
You changed partners, in other words?
Yes.
Now, how did that come about exactly? I mean, did you all sit around and discuss it, or did it happen by chance? Or did you both leap into the arms of Mr. and Mrs. Sanderson at the first meeting?
Mrs. Sanderson and I were attracted to each other. And later on, Mr. Sanderson and Christine decided to, make a go of it as well.
By make a go of it as well, do you mean they decided to commit adultery?
If you like, yes.
I don't like it at all, Mr. Blandford. It would be true then to say that you and Mrs. Sanderson were very strongly attracted to each other.
Yes.
And then a short time afterwards, your wife and Mr. Sanderson decided to make a go of it as well.
Yes.
You make that sound rather lukewarm.
Not at all. It's a natural development.
Its naturalness is a matter of opinion, Mr. Blandford. Now, was Mr. Sanderson very assiduous in his attentions to your wife?
He seemed to be.
But he cooled off when he became attracted to Margaret Lawler.
I don't know. He didn't confide in me.
But it is true to say, isn't it, that he was less keen on your wife than she was on him?
We don't believe in measuring our feelings.
Now, you and Mrs. Sanderson are still very much attracted to each other, aren't you?
Yes.
Well, your wife must have been jealous of this attachment if it was so much stronger than her own, must she not?
Not at all.
Mr. Blandford, your wife has felt that her marriage has failed, hasn't she?
No. I've told you we have a successful marriage.
Are you really asking the court to believe that a marriage is deemed successful only when both partners find satisfaction outside of it?
That's not what I said. Obviously, you need a firm base, you need a strong feeling for your wife or husband, but that doesn't mean that you are tethered to them for the rest of your life.
Have you ever thought of divorcing your wife?
Oh, you're looking for business.
Mr. Blandford, if that sort of behaviour occurs again, I shall hold you to be in contempt of court.
I'm sorry, but I found that question offensive.
You will nevertheless answer in a proper manner. Will you please continue, Mr. Lloyd?
Yes, thank you, my lord. Mr. Blandford, have you ever thought of divorcing your wife?
Never.
You think perhaps that a husband has a duty to stick by his wife in times of trouble?
Yes.
And that loyalty would extend to covering up for her and telling lies?
If necessary, yes, but in this case it hasn't.
Hasn't it? Well, now, you told my learned friend that you had occasion to speak to Mr. Curtis, your neighbour, about an alleged improper suggestion that he made to your wife.
Yes.
Well, when did this conversation take place?
I don't remember, some time ago.
A long time ago or recently?
It was just after we went to live at the Close.
Yet you invited this man, a man who you claim made an improper suggestion to your wife, to your barbecue party.
Yes. Christine is very forgiving. Besides, we both liked Mrs. Curtis.
Oh, come on now, Mr. Blandford. Isn't this story of an improper suggestion merely a fabrication which you've devised simply to cast doubt on Mr. Curtis's impartiality?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Blandford. No further questions.
I call Trevor Sanderson, my
Well,
lord.
you may stand down.
Trevor Sanderson, please. Come this way, sir.
What is your religion?
I don't have one.
You wish to affirm?
Yes.
Please read out loud the words on that card.
I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Are you Trevor Graham Sanderson?
I am.
And you live at 19 Winchester Close, Fulchester?
No.
What is your address?
I now live at the Melvois Hotel, Fulchester.
The court should have been notified of this change of address.
Well, I'm sorry, my lord, but I only moved 2 or 3 days ago.
Are you the husband of Anita Fleur Sanderson and formerly of 19 Winchester Close?
Yes.
Why have you changed your address?
I no longer wish to live with my wife.
Why is that?
There have been differences between us for a long time, and this trial has made up my mind for me.
Would you kindly explain what you mean?
I consider that my wife's judgment has been clouded by her infatuation with Mr. Blandford, and this may have coloured her evidence against Mrs. Blandford.
Are you saying that your wife may have perjured herself?
No, my lord, I said that I thought her judgment was clouded. That doesn't mean to say I think she's been deliberately telling lies.
That is what you believe?
Yes.
Do you know of any reason why Mrs. Blandford should want to deliberately harm Margaret Lawler?
I can't think of any.
Well, were you having an affair with Margaret Lawler?
No.
Well, your wife says she saw you in bed together.
Ah, yes, well, that's a bit unfortunate, but it doesn't constitute an affair.
Mr. Sanderson, what does, to your mind, constitute an affair?
Well, I really don't know, my lord. It's a word I never use of in relation to myself or my friends. An affair is something rather furtive for people who aren't liberated. It smacks of hotel bedrooms rented by the hour.
Then how would you describe your extramarital experience with Margaret Lawler or Christine Blandford?
It's a relationship.
Semantics.
How did you regard Margaret Lawler, then?
She was and is a close friend.
Was the fact that you slept with Mrs. Lawler known to Mrs. Blandford?
No, I never had any occasion to mention it to her.
Do you recognize this letter, Exhibit 2, my lord?
Yes, it's a letter written by Margaret to me.
Now, it has been said that this letter came into Mrs. Blandford's possession. How could that have happened?
I don't know.
Could she have taken it out of your pocket on one of her visits to you?
Hardly. I'd have noticed if she'd been rummaging about in my pockets. Besides, I never keep letters in my pocket.
Where do you keep them?
They're usually in my bureau, in my rumpus room.
Does anyone else, apart from yourself, have access to that bureau?
No. Only Anita.
Did you at any time conduct a sexual liaison with Mrs. Blandford?
Yes, of course.
And has that now ceased?
Yes, we haven't slept with each other since Halloween.
Now, you're reported as having been seen in the Royal George Hotel in Preston on April the 18th of this year with Mrs. Blandford. Now, were you at that hotel on that date?
Yes, I was.
And did you sign in another woman as your wife?
Yes.
Was that woman Mrs. Blandford?
No.
Well, who was she?
I don't know. She told me her name was Melanie.
You don't know her name and address?
I'm afraid I don't. I did try to find her, but she was actually a common prostitute. I was told she was somewhere in Liverpool, but I don't know where.
Now, even when your relationship with Mrs. Blandford cooled, did you continue to see her?
Yes, of course.
And so, who ended the relationship then?
Relationships have a life of their own. And like all life, they come to an end.
You are not here to deliver bon mot. The question was perfectly clear. Did you spurn Christine Blandford, or did she spurn you?
Well, I'm sorry, my lord, but it really isn't a question of spurning. We continued to see each other. Christine told me that night that she wanted to discontinue the sexual part of our relationship.
So she spurned you sexually?
Not really. The sex had been a bit ropey for a long time. She was the one who took the initiative and said what we were both thinking.
Well, in the light of that, can you conceive that Mrs. Blandford could have been jealous of Mrs. Lawler?
No, there was nothing for her to be jealous about. Besides, Christine isn't a jealous person.
Now, Mr. Sanderson, did you see the incident with the kebab spit?
Yes, I did.
Will you describe what you saw?
Well, there was a bit of a stampede. Everybody had been drinking. They were pushing and shoving a bit to get first pick. Christine was doing all the work, dishing out the kebabs as best as she could in the circumstances. You know, being a bit high. Everybody was. She was very lively. She kept up a stream of chatter, trying to jolly everybody along. I said, "You look like one of the Three Musketeers waving those sticks about." She was holding out the kebab spits to people, and it did pass through my mind that it was dangerous. When she came to serve Margaret, she seemed to skid on the grass and she shouted.
Now, who was she shouting at?
She was shrieking to people to get out of the way.
Did you see the kebab spit strike Mrs. Lawler?
Yes, I was only standing a few feet away from her.
And was it a result of a blow deliberately aimed?
No, of course not. The spit just seemed to fly through the air as she lost her balance.
Now, was there any general accusation of assault at that time?
No, we were all too busy attending to Margaret. I wanted to take her to hospital in my stag, but Anita already had her Avenger in the drive.
How would you describe Mrs. Lawler's state of mind immediately after the accident?
Well, she was suffering from shock. Sobbing and that, naturally, she was a bit hysterical.
But you say that she made no accusations immediately at that time?
None at all.
Now, when did you learn that she'd accused Mrs. Blandford of deliberately striking her?
Not that night. When we visited her the next day, we found that the police had been, at her request, to the bedside.
Your marriage has broken down, Mr. Sanderson. Why is that?
My wife seems to believe that her future lies with Mr. Blandford. They seem unusually attached to each other.
So your wife regards Mrs. Blandford as an obstacle to the future she sees for herself with Mr. Blandford?
It's possible.
Thank you, Mr. Sanderson.
Mr. Sanderson, by my reckoning, which may of course be deficient, as I was never very strong in arithmetic, you admit to having slept with 4 women in the past year. That's Anita Sanderson, Christine Blandford, Margaret Lawler, and a common prostitute. Is that correct?
No, I never admitted to having slept with my wife. In fact, I haven't.
Mr. Sanderson, do you have any sense of honour towards women?
I don't understand what you mean by honour.
Well, these women that you take up and discard so lightly, do you have any feelings of loyalty towards them afterwards?
Yes, of course.
And isn't that why you're protecting Christine Blandford, your former mistress?
I'm not protecting her. I've no need to.
Aren't you? You say that Mrs. Blandford didn't know that you were sleeping or had slept with Margaret Lawler. Yet a letter comes into Mrs. Blandford's possession, a letter couched in the most affectionate terms written by Mrs. Lawler. And you still say that Christine Blandford had no knowledge of your sleeping with Mrs. Lawler.
It wasn't conclusive.
But it surely must have aroused her suspicion.
Possibly, but as she was the one who had requested that we discontinue our sexual relations, there would have been no reason for her to be jealous. Christine wasn't jealous.
Ah, yes, I forgot. According to you, she had discontinued the relationship. Well, perhaps it was because of that you were at the Royal George Hotel in Preston on April the 18th with a common prostitute.
Perhaps.
A woman who has apparently disappeared off the face of the earth.
Even prostitutes are mortal.
But it's most convenient, though.
No, I did try to contact her, but nobody seems to know of her existence.
If indeed she existed at all. Mr. Curtis doesn't seem to think she did. Did you see Mr. Curtis in the hotel on that evening?
Yes, I did.
Did you speak to him?
I said good evening.
Did your friend say good evening?
Well, that wasn't quite her style. I did say she was a tart.
Answer the question, Mr. Sanderson, and do not indulge in flippant remarks.
Well, I'm sorry, my lord, but Mr. Curtis neglected to say that where he saw us was the Regency Grill, and the lighting is entirely in muted flambeau with little red lamps at each table. It really is very dim in there.
But despite this dimness, Mr. Curtis didn't mistake you. But he did mistake a common prostitute for Christine Blandford, his next-door neighbour. Is that what you're saying?
Actually, she wasn't all that common. She'd been convent-educated.
Mr. Sanderson, if there are any more remarks of that nature, I shall hold you to be in contempt of court.
Well, I'm sorry, my lord, but I was only reporting the whole truth. She did, in fact, tell me that she'd been brought up in a convent in Lytham St. Anne's, and she was very well spoken. I was only trying to indicate that it might be possible to confuse her with a woman like Mrs. Blandford.
Nevertheless, I find your manner offensive. Please conduct yourself with more propriety.
Thank you, my lord. Now, you say that your wife imagines her future to lie with Mr. Blandford.
Yes.
Well, with whom does your future lie, Mr. Sanderson? With Mrs. Blandford, if she's acquitted?
No.
With whom, then?
I really don't know.
With Margaret Lawler, perhaps?
No.
But it would have been reasonable of Mrs. Blandford to assume that that was precisely what you'd planned at the time of the party, would it not? You did escort Mrs. Lawler to the barbecue. You admit to having slept with her. And Mrs. Blandford was in the possession of a letter written by Mrs. Lawler to you. Is that not so?
But Mrs. Blandford and I were no longer lovers.
That's what you keep telling me, Mr. Sanderson. But for a woman who has renounced her lover to continue to see him alone on Mondays and Thursdays, isn't that a little bizarre?
We were friends. It isn't bizarre for friends to see each other regularly.
Now, Mr. Sanderson, you say that your wife's judgment is clouded. But is it not more true to say that it is your own judgment that is suspect, and that everything you've told us, and the manner in which you've told it, indicate an attempt to discredit both your wife, whom you've now decided to leave, and Mrs. Lawler, of whom you have also tired, apparently because of your insatiable appetite for women?
That's quite untrue. It's because of the kind of life we lead that our marriages are under such pressure. We move around so often. There's nobody on the estate likely to stay for more than 3 years at the most. Our work moves us on from town to town. You make instant friendships and drop them when you move and take up with another lot. You've no family background. You've nothing in common, except that you're climbing the professional ladder and shifting about from place to place.
Yes. So that's fascinating, Mr. Sanderson. But to get back to the case, was it not as a result of one of your many entanglements, namely with the accused, that she, imagining Margaret Lawler to be her successor, as indeed she was, on meeting her became jealous, argumentative, high on drink, and then deliberately and maliciously attacked Mrs. Lawler?
Not in the least. It was an accident.
Thank you, Mr. Sanderson.
That is the case for the defence, my lord.
Now, members of the jury, you may well feel that none of the individuals concerned in this confusing tangle of relationships, licit and illicit, emerges with any great credit from the events that you've heard described in this court today. You may well be amazed, as I am, to find some bizarre new modes of conduct arising round that institution which most of us believe to be the fundamental cornerstone of our civilization. I am referring, of course, to the institution of marriage. You may also be disturbed to find that these new modes of conduct are prevalent not among the poor and the outcast, but among those sections of our community who, by their privileged position, should embody those principles that we consider to be right and true. However that may be, you are required here to seek what is true, a task rendered doubly difficult by the evidence that you have heard in this court and the manner in which it has been presented. You are required to decide one fundamental issue: whether the action of Christine Blandford was a simple accident, or whether it was a deliberate attempt to wound Margaret Lawler. Now, you've heard varying accounts of this incident, all of them mostly unreliable, considering most of the witnesses had been drinking. Now, we know that Mrs. Blandford proffered a kebab spit to Mrs. Lawler, that she took a fresh kebab from the fire. We know that the grass was wet, that the barbecue was unstable, and that Mrs. Blandford was wearing unsuitably fashionable shoes. Now, it's clear that some disagreements had arisen between these two women during the course of the evening. Now, was it a bitter personal dispute, as Mrs. Sanderson insists, or was it a heated difference of opinion? Well, that is for you to decide. At the time of the incident, it was agreed by all concerned that Mrs. Blandford did cry out. Now, was that an incoherent cry? Was it abuse at Mrs. Lawler, or was it a warning shout? You must remember that Mrs. Lawler made no accusation against Mrs. Blandford immediately after the incident. Now, was that because she was too preoccupied with her own pain, or was it because the idea had not at that point occurred to her? These are just some of the questions you may well be asking yourself. Now, the questions of fact are for you alone to decide, and the prosecution must prove them beyond reasonable doubt. The elements of the offence are, first, that the defendant inflicted a wound on Mrs. Lawler, and it is clear on her own admission that it was the skewer in her hand which caused the wound. The second element which the prosecution have to establish is that this wound was caused intentionally. The prosecution have suggested a motive which is, in short, that Mrs. Blandford was jealous of Mrs. Lawler. Now, it's a question for you whether the prosecution have made out their case for this. However, even if you accept that there might have been some motive or some animosity between these women, you must still be satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that on this occasion Mrs. Blandford intended to cause Mrs. Lawler serious bodily harm. If you are sure of this, it will be your duty to convict. If you have any reasonable doubt, then it will be your duty to return a verdict of not guilty. Now, members of the jury, will you kindly retire to consider your verdict?
All stand. Members of the jury, will your foreman please rise? Just answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached a verdict upon which you are all agreed?
Yes.
Do you find the accused Christine Blandford guilty or not guilty of malicious wounding?
Not guilty.
Mrs. Blandford, you are free to go.
Court will rise.
Join us again when our cameras return to watch a leading case in the Crown Court.